Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med-CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med-CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @Pre-Med-CC.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We're glad to have Dr. Charles Vega, who is the program director for the PRIME-LC program, and he's also an assistant dean at University of California, Irvine School of Medicine. He has, well, that's right.
Go Eaters.
And he's from NorCal, and we've lost him to Southern California. But he attended medical school. He attended undergraduate at Harvard and medical school at University of Wisconsin. And he's been at Irvine for a few years now. And we're glad to have Ignacio Chavez, who is a first-year medical student and is and also Adicelia Alfaro, who is a third-year medical student at and they're both in the UCI PRIME-LC program, and we're happy that they could join us and give us their input about the program. So without further ado, Dr. Vega, you can take it away.
Okay, thanks very much, Jim. It's always great to hear your voice and be part of your efforts. I always love the passion you bring to everything, and so it's great to reconnect, because this is, I think, the first time we've really done a project together since 2020, when the world went upside down. So yeah, but we've been persevering here in Orange County, working to produce physician leaders for California's poor and disenfranchised Latino community. So I was asked to speak about the program of medical education for the Latino community, or PRIME-LC, today, and that's what we're going to do. Our agenda is essentially that I'm going to share some of the things you want to know about PRIME-LC. And then I will hand it off to our students, because one of the most important parts of PRIME-LC is actually not the curriculum or what our alumni have done. So I think it's actually pretty impressive what they've done. It's actually the people in the program. So you're going to get to meet two of them today at different levels. So we've got a third-year medical student, Araceli, and then we've got Ignacio as a first-year student to represent us today. So they're going to share some of their experience. And that way you get kind of like the old person view of things. So like the OK Boomer presentation, that's my job. And then they're going to come and clean up after I'm done. But I'm going to share a screen because I think we have some good data and I want to share it. So we actually just presented this at the Western Group on Educational Affairs, because Prime is good and it gets good attention. There's a lot of places that wish they could do programs like PRIME-LC. All right, and I started. Okay, so let's get started. Hopefully, I think you can probably see the screen. I'm just going to click a couple things to clean this up. PRIME-LC began in 2004 You might know that every University of California has a prime associated with it. If they have a School of Medicine, then they have a prime. There are currently 8 programs. There used to be just 5 primes across the state. Now there are 8, and they all have a different focus. So in San Francisco, UCSF has the prime US for urban underserved. And in Los Angeles, they have leadership and advocacy. Davis does rural health and tribal health. And here at UCI, we're the only prime or the only UCI medical school that actually has 2 primes here. So we have Latino community, which is the oldest prime, goes back to 2004. I think the next one that came into being was 2006. We also have leadership to advance equity and diversity, African, Black, and Caribbean, prime lead ABC, which is a lot of letters. So that is focused on African, Black, and Caribbean communities. And that's been a newer program here. It's been running for the past 4 years overall. So it's exciting times for prime across the state. And I think things are doing really well, but we've always had Latino community at our heart. If you don't know Orange County, I work in my regular job is really as a professor of family medicine. I'm a family doctor, so I see patients in the largest safety net clinic in Orange County, and that's where a lot of our students train. Is in Central Orange County, which is primarily Latino and primarily poor. And so it's a real honor and privilege to be down here for this long. Although I'm not sure that Northern California was so sad to lose me there. They might have been happy to see me go. Let's talk about our curriculum. What is PRIME-LC? So how do we create physician leaders for Latino communities? Well, I'm actually really proud of our curriculum. I'm proud that it was really born through a lot of work with students directly and also working with the community. And so we keep those things in mind as you move through medical school. And I think no matter what prime you go into or wherever you go in your health career, you want to be a good practitioner of healthcare. So I'm a physician. I want to be a good physician. I had clinic this morning. I saw a range of different illnesses, some pretty severe stuff. You work in a safety net clinic, you see more acute cases and more challenging cases than you would, a lot more barriers to getting maybe optimal A+ care. And I thrive in that environment. I actually really love it because it takes more problem solving. We're working with patients to find their advantages and disadvantages. You have to be able to learn how to do that stuff and have integrity and trust with your patients. I think before you can be a real leader. And so you really need to, take anatomy, take pharmacology, do well in your surgery clerkship, your OBGYN clerkship, et cetera. You have to be a complete healthcare provider. And I think that's true whether you're going to pharmacy or nursing or whatever. It's hard to be a leader if you're not good at your profession, because your profession fuels that leadership. It gives you the initiative, but it also takes a lot of the personal characteristics for being a good healthcare professional translate to just being a good person, whether you're an advocate or a leader for the community. Those characteristics are shared. So you're still medical school is still medical school. Like you have to take all those classes I just mentioned in PRIME-LC, but you actually get added coursework, yay, on top of your regular coursework. And we've right-sized it. The reason we worked with students is we overreached the first couple of years and we gave them too much and they said, this is too much. And we backed off that so they could still do well in all their regular coursework. So let me tell you what we do in PRIME-LC. We start before you even begin in medical school. The pre-MS1 program runs in June to July. The official medical school starts in August. And what is the immersion program in Latino health? Think of it like the greatest hits of PRIME-LC. It's what do we do well? We do clinical care well. We do community engagement well, we do mentorship well, we do advocacy well, and you get a chance to do all those things. But it's a kind of a whirlwind because in about 3.5 weeks, you're going to get a chance to experience all the stuff we normally do in PRIME-LC, including introduction to a lot of community groups locally here in Orange County specifically, but also you take a trip to the border and learn about border health with Ángeles de la Frontera, which is a very important advocacy group that helps with border health and helps with other issues related to migration. You'll spend time in the Central Valley of California, where there's some of the greatest need among Latino communities, and learning about rural health and what it's like for farm workers there specifically. And then you'll spend a day in Sacramento, doing advocacy. And so my favorite day in Prime-LC curriculum is absolutely the day that you transition from the fields outside Fresno, where you're really interacting and talking directly to farm workers about some of the challenges they have for their well-being and what they want to achieve with their healthcare. And then that afternoon, you drive up to Sacramento. The very next morning, you as students are presenting to sometimes to members of the legislature, to the people in the governor's office. So Prime gets a lot of attention. And I love that transition of being able to go from folks who are really disenfranchised, who don't have a lot of power, to those who have all the power, and being able to translate for those individuals and speak for health equity for Latino communities. So that's the summer before you start. And it's great for making contacts, and that way you get an idea of all the things we can do, and that's very informative. So that informs you during your next few years, so you can take advantage of those opportunities, whatever it may be. When you get into Prime-LC, like we have a clinical foundations course, is a doctoring course that every medical school has. How do you do a patient interview? How do you do a physical exam? And so these cases have been translated to have issues around culture and health disparities. About 80% of them are conducted in Spanish in small groups. So you get to practice your medical Spanish and have some immersion in that environment. There's a longitudinal project that's due, a service learning project for Prime-LC students. That has to be something that's for all students at UCI, but for Prime-LC students, we expect it to be for Latino community. They also have a year-long clerkship between the MS 1 and 2 years, and that's done in clinics like mine that see a majority Spanish-speaking population. The other critical part of the pre-MS1 summer that continues is there's a course by Chicano Latino Studies. And so Chicano Latino Studies is the backbone of our curriculum. It runs through the first 3 years of medical school. You start in the pre-MS1 summer really looking at culture and historical antecedents for health disparities among Latinos. MS1 and 2 years spent looking at modern issues and how that is how that came to be, but also potential solutions, looking at policy. And in the MS3 year, you're really applying more of those principles. Now you're kind of looking at your own patients that you're seeing in the hospital and in clinics, and applying some of those principles to, gosh, why did this person wind up on dialysis? Was that really necessary? Why can't this person access, hearing aids? Something fairly straightforward and simple, it would seem, but instead they are profoundly disabled because they can't hear. So you'll actually be working with our Chicano Latinos faculty in these seminars, and that's a really important part of our curriculum throughout. We have some monthly meetings where we have featured speakers. A lot of our speakers are alumni, so those are student faculty meetings. They're partly to boost morale, partly to share information, and partly for professional development. Your clinical clerkships in the third year are all spent in clinics like mine. You get special placement in areas where we have the highest concentration of Latino patients. And then at the end of the MS3 year, we have a very important capstone project I consider this the capstone for our curriculum, which is an international rotation in Lima, Peru, where you get to compare and contrast the healthcare system and the patient-physician relationship in Latin America versus the United States. So you spend a clinical rotation there. I can tell you the teachers are outstanding. The pathology is really, it's like at a different level compared to what I see here in Santa Ana. So it's a great time to learn. It's also the last time your cohort's really together as a group, because when you come back from that rotation in June-ish of your MS4 year now, you'll go off and do a master's year. Master's is of your choosing. I can get our master's choices, but if it's pertinent to Latino health, we will, we're going to say go for it. Most of our students choose a master's in public health, master's in business administration, and this helps them to, they've had all these experiences. They've gone through CLS course, the Chicano Latino Studies course, or CLS courses. It's a great time to be able to kind of put some of those things together and think about it at a higher level in a formal program where you get a master's. So if you don't have a master's pertinent to Latino health coming into Prime-LC, you get one in that 4th year. And then you come back and you start applying for residency and you're doing your clinical coursework. So that's our curriculum. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. And I'm really happy with the pedagogy of it. And hopefully our students like it too. You can ask them shortly. These are just some of the same things I just described to you. Who qualifies for PRIME-LC? You may be wondering this. So first of all, you have to get your primary application, your AMCAS application into the School of Medicine. So, and if you put in, if you get a secondary application to medical school, you check a box simply online and say, I want to apply to PRIME-LC or LEAD ABC. Could you apply to both? No. It's busy enough in medical school that we've decided you can't do 2 mission-based programs at once, because it'd be way too much and kind of sets you up for failure actually. So no, you choose one or the other, and I understand there's intersectionality, but I can get to that during question and answer time. There's a lot of intersectionality around health disparities, and I think our students really embrace that and that's something they take up and may have a specific focus within Latino health that they want to do. So but one thing is you have to have a background in being engaged in the Latino community in some way or another. I think it's worth mentioning that about 80% of PRIME-LC students historically have been Latino, but that means 20% aren't. So you don't have to be Latino to apply to PRIME-LC. But you do need to have at least competent Spanish language skills. So you don't need to be fluent, but you do need to be able to maintain a conversation, porque si no puede comunicar bien en español, no va a ganar lo que necesite del programa. Entonces, del primer día debe al menos mantener la conversación razonable con la gente. So you need to be able to speak Spanish at least a moderate level. And so the good news is if you have some Spanish, or maybe you grew up speaking Spanish and that kind of gets left behind a little bit, that happens frequently when folks go away to college. If that's what you do, then yeah, practice up. You should be better off. And it's always a good skill to have, and one I of course work on routinely. So okay, in terms of the application, yeah, the only things that we don't burden you too much, a couple extra essays about why you want to be in PRIME-LC. And then very importantly, when you get to campus, you always get for applying to School of Medicine, you get a faculty interview, a student interview in English, but then you get a PRIME-LC interview in Espanol, because we are going to check how you work with the language. And again, I don't want you to get too stressed about that. There's actually a video on our website about what the kind of Spanish that we request that you be able to speak, and kind of the minimum levels. You don't have to know every single technical term, particularly if it was in some kind of research. And I find there's a lot of false cognates when we talk about, I don't know, mitochondria and mitochondria. It's like, I'm not sure that's exactly, but I've heard scientists from Mexico telling me that's what it is. So I'm trusting them. So yeah, don't worry about that. Again, we're really looking for that conversational is the most important thing. So here are our students. It's just a fairly recent picture with the last cohort. No, this is an older cohort. I thought I replaced this photo. Sorry. I must have a different version of the slides than I thought I did. But anyway, they're great. They're very supportive. I love my friends from medical school. I did not go to UC. But I don't see the kind of bond I have with my friends as strong as what happens in PRIME-LC, because you really do spend so much time together, and it's a great internal support system. You get extra support from myself and our coordinator, Lucero Zamudio Fernandez. So yeah, there's some extra benefits to being in PRIME-LC, and I'll get to those shortly. One of the benefits is that we have a really strong track record of success. So I think very importantly, when you think of PRIME-LC, I think all the people who are interviewing think it's a 5-year program. I do 4 years of medical school and a master's year of 5. Well, actually, it's a 30-year program. Because at 30 years after we get you in, if you've done the work and you're in the community and you're doing an amazing job of taking care of patients and being a strong advocate, 30 years we're probably done with you. But we have a very strong alumni network that we've invested in. So you are going to be supported by our program into your career, because I can tell you that it never stops. It's always new challenges, whether you're in medical school, residency training, fellowship, early career, mid-career, a late career. Yeah, there's challenges every step of the way. And so we want to support our graduates so that that sense of familia that we have here, we want to extend to our alumni. And by bringing our alumni into events and giving them opportunities through our PRIME-LC Alumni Association, it's been really great. And the only thing we really ask in return, we don't ask for money, believe it or not, like most alumni associations do. That's not our job. We do ask you to fill out a survey every couple of years to inform us what you're doing to stay in practice. That's all we ask. It's less than 15 minutes. So here's the results of our survey. We've invested in our alumni. That's our outcome that we're looking at. So you can see that these are the most popular specialties among our graduates: family medicine, pediatrics, emergency medicine, internal medicine, OBGYN, and psychiatry. But we don't put a limit on your specialty. So while this was identified, these core areas, those 6 that I've identified in this graph, were the ones that were emphasized in when we founded PRIME-LC in 2004. I think everybody is very happy if you become a plastic surgeon, a general surgeon, a radiologist, a dermatologist. That's fine. You know, you have to be satisfied with the work you do every day, because for a lot of us, that's the work we do every day. We're, you know, first an emergency medicine doctor, a family doctor, etc. And if that doesn't go well, if you're not loving that kind of work, then, you know, that's going to set you up for burnout. We don't need more burned out physicians. So there's no limit on the specialty choice. And I can tell you that Prime's been very competitive in all these specialties. It really does help your application to residency to have Prime by your name, because it's just so many residency programs. I was a residency director for 10 years. I was looking for exactly these type of students coming into our program. Why? Because we had the social justice mission. We had a health equity mission, and we wanted folks who bought into that mission. When you see PRIME-LC by your name, it's automatic. We know you're bought in. Don't have to really say much more. You should. If you're going to have a good interview, you should say more, but yeah, you don't necessarily have to. Let's see. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is shoot, I can't believe I don't know what file I have. So I've got updates on this. We actually are doing better with our attending practices. This is looking at outcomes again, and I'll just give you the new numbers. Sorry, I downloaded the wrong slide deck, the wrong version. So right now we still have almost about 4/5 of folks. These are attending. So these are folks who graduated from PRIME-LC, went through residency and or fellowship, and they're out. They can do whatever they want. It's not a loan repayment program. We don't really have any control of what our graduates do. They can go practice in Newport Beach or whatever, Beverly Hills, and there's nothing holding them back from doing that. They don't. So actually now with our current data, about 2/3, 66%, work with a majority Latino and a majority poor population. And the proportion that are going to private practice is actually really low. So it's actually down to 5% now, which is remarkably flipped from the rest of their classmates who aren't in PRIME-LC. So they really are, fulfilling the mission and walking the walk. And when they're working in federally qualified health center, FQHC, county facilities, that they're doing good work every single day. And every year we have about 12 graduates who come out and further that mission even beyond what we did the previous year. We formed this alumni association. You can see we're really invested in having a larger impact on the health of the entire state of California. You could practice outside California too. Usually folks who do that have like family reasons because they grew up in X state and they want to go back to X state, have a family. Of course, that's totally understandable. We won't disown you. But yeah, I think it's we are a California program, so we really do tend to focus on California. And not only that, our attendings have leadership outside of their practice. So many serve on school boards. They're doing some kind of community health work. They may be involved with public health efforts in their local communities. And many do mentorship and teaching as well. So about 3/4 do some kind of mentorship. So as they rise, they're reaching back behind them. And overall, this is that day with the Trabajadores en el Campo, in Fresno. And look at the grapes; they're beautiful. I'm with that. I've been really blessed to be with this program since before it was even part of UC. We owe a huge debt to Al Manetta, who was it was his idea. He was an OBGYN here at UCI, but it took a lot of support to make it happen. From 01 to 04, the planning went, and it was very up and down, but now it's made a huge difference across the state, where the legislatures recognized us, where we're getting money from the state to actually continue to expand the University of California Prime pool across all UCs. And I'll just say that, Prime was such a good idea that it was the first expansion of the School of Medicine class as a whole across the University of California in 35 years, which was insane, because you can imagine like the population of California really swelled between 1970 and 2004. But UC kept churning out the same number of doctors every single year during that time. And it was Prime that really convinced them, like, hey, this is a good idea and we should expand. So with that, do we want to stop for questions? I'm going to stop sharing. And do we want to stop for questions now, and then either Araceli or Ignacio speak? Maybe you guys can go, and then we'll just do.
Yeah, let the students go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'll be quiet. So, Ignacio, your camera just went on first, so I think
you're it.
Sounds good. Hi everyone. My name is Ignacio. So I'm a first-year medical student. And you wanted me to just kind of talk a little bit about like my journey to get to medical school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Orange County. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. After high school, I attended a community college. So I went to Orange Coast College, and I took some courses at Golden West College as well. I was originally a biology major. I think from like a young age, the idea of becoming a doctor was something that I was considering. I didn't exactly know why, and I had a lot of doubts. So what ended up happening was I ended up changing my major to nutrition. And that was something that I found I was just really interested in. My mom had like she was like really passionate about it. Like she was always trying to like cook like our traditional Mexican foods like in a healthier manner. And it's just something that really stuck with me. So after I did 3 years at community college, I transferred to the University of New Mexico, and I completed my bachelor's there. While I was in New Mexico, that's where I really like just developed this passion for wanting to work with like underserved populations. New Mexico is a state where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of crime, and I was just seeing like how these things were affecting like, basically all the families around me, students around me too. And so I continued with my major. At that point, I figured I was almost done. I was on the path of becoming a registered dietitian. So I applied for a master's and dietetic internship program. So I ended up moving to St. Louis University, where I did my master's. And I was also doing my internship. So I was working in the hospital. I was working with patients. It's a really interesting major. Nutrition, like I got to do like clinical work. I got to do community work. And like what really surprised me was like, at first I was really interested in nutrition because I wanted to learn about like, what are like specific foods that we should eat, to be as healthy as possible. But I was starting to see that there's a lot of people around me who like I was counseling that they didn't even have access to food in the first place. So like I was seeing a lot of like food insecurity. It's like these were like issues that were kind of like in the back of my mind that were kind of like eating away at me. I was like, these are like things that I need to address. Like I can't be telling someone to, eat more kale if, they just don't even know what they're going to eat like later that day. And so I ended up, after I finished my master's degree, I worked as a nutritionist for the WIC program, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. And this was actually in New Mexico. I had moved back to New Mexico. I was working at a clinic there. It was actually at a federally qualified health center, or FQHC. So it was pretty unique that they had a WIC clinic inside of their building. And it was just a really cool experience because I got to work with families. Like I would see women come in who were pregnant. I would kind of counsel them on how to eat throughout their pregnancy. And then, they'd come in later with their baby, and then I'd see those babies turn one. And so it was really cool seeing this like continuity of care. And while I was there, because it was in a FQHC, I got a lot of experience or like kind of interacting with the pediatricians that were there. Sometimes the pediatricians would come over and be like, hey, like I have this mom who doesn't know, can't feed her baby because, she can't breastfeed right now and she can't afford formula. And I'd be able to like squeeze her in for an appointment and she'd be able to walk out with, 8 cans of formula for the day. And so it was a really cool experience where I got to kind of work with other healthcare professionals. And that's really like where my passion for medicine came in, because I was working with these families and I realized that like I wanted to be able to do more than just counsel on nutrition. And so at this point, I decided that I wanted to apply to medical school. And so I actually went back to community college and I finished up a couple of like remaining prerequisite courses that I had. I also felt like I needed to have like a little bit more like direct clinical experience just to make sure that this was actually what I wanted to do too. And so while I was like finishing my courses, studying for the MCAT, I worked as a scribe in the emergency department. And that was like a really good experience because I got to see a lot and I got to work with a lot of different physicians. And so, yeah, so that was, this last year, UCI PRIME-LC was my first choice. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here, but that's kind of how I got here.
Thank you, Ignacio. Sally, you want to share your story?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, y'all. So yeah, go by Araceli, Ari also. I am a non-traditional, so I'm actually in my 3rd year and I'm in my 30s, early 30s. So I grew up in a huge family. I'm like the youngest of 9 kids. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up broke, though I didn't realize at the time how broke I was because I was surrounded by my own community, other Latinos and folks from immigrant backgrounds, and, went through the public school system and did a lot of work. Like I've been working since like the age of since before 9th grade, essentially. And I like always had an inclination of like wanting to help folks in a medical way. My mom was in and out of the hospitals and things like that, and she really didn't have the best experiences within the healthcare system in the U.S. So I went to college. I was fortunate enough to be accepted at Princeton University, and there I learned so much from also experienced a good bit of culture shock and just like the vast differences of like privilege and wealth and things like that. But I kind of was tied in between, like I did a psych major and was focused on clinical psychology, was considering like maybe I want to do like psychotherapy, get a PsyD. So I came out of college just kind of in the middle of the road at the fork in the road, but also in college I didn't always have the best experiences. I ended up filing a Title IX. So if any of y'all want to talk about like difficulties in institutions or navigating institutions, I'm happy to talk about that too. But essentially I ended up doing some research in HIV, some research in PrEP, that led one thing to another, and I ended up doing a lot of oncology clinical research at UCSF. So I can also talk about pathways into pharmaceutical companies and things like that. But I ultimately decided to do the post-baccalaureate in the UC system, which is primed for folks coming from marginalized backgrounds. And they really help to set you up just to kind of address, prepare you for medical school. They prepare you for the MCAT, and you take courses in the sciences as well, and advanced sciences. And so that helped me along my path to applying to medical school. And within the PRIME program, I did choose UCI PRIME specifically for the PRIME program. I said no to other schools, just knowing that like this is what I wanted. I wanted the challenge of like working with Spanish speaking communities, improving my Spanish, because I did lose a lot of it being in New Jersey for a little bit, as well as San Francisco area. So my goal has always just been to do the most good. And I've engaged with not only the Latino community, but also the LGBT community within the school. I've done a lot of work with harm reduction and needle exchange, less so in Orange County because it's a big hurdle here in getting even the city to support that. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about all those variety of topics. And yeah.
So yeah, questions, anybody just type in the Q&A. Also, Dr. Vega knows a lot about admission and he's very involved with admission.
Yeah.
definitely for the Prime-LC one, but also general admission.
Yep.
So one of the first questions is, can an out-of-state student apply to Prime-LC?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is because we're a mission-based program and we have some, I guess, special cachet. We can absolutely look at and put folks on out-of-state status, similar level as in-state. So yes, absolutely. I didn't mention all, and you think, well, gosh, well, what about tuition? Yeah, I just want to say that it varies from year to year, but we've always been able to support our students. About 2/3 of our students have disadvantaged status on their application when they apply, and so we've worked hard to try to focus on scholarships for the students, and so it varies from year to year. But generally, we've always tried to do is take out the cost of that extra year of training and pay for that in scholarships. And some years we've gone way beyond that, to the point now where certainly for our first couple, for our MS1 and 2 years, the majority of students are receiving full tuition scholarships. They also get preferred housing on campus, which helps save money as well. And we paid for things like their pre-MS1 summer and the clinical clerkship in Peru. So there are some financial rewards with being here, because we recognize that it's a challenge and we're trying to keep debt, of course, to a minimum.
Another question was, what was the most rewarding experience as a medical student, graduate, doctor, and then what about some of the challenges that you've all overcome?
I want to hear.
Well,
We
for
want
me,
to hear from the Title IX. That's a really interesting one.
well, that was back in undergrad. So the most rewarding, like in medicine, like I for sure know I chose the right path, because despite my critiques on the systems in healthcare, I have enjoyed every rotation, and it's really been the patients who have made it enjoyable. Even in the most difficult moments, even when the patient's really frustrated at you because of everything that's going on, they recognize the work we're doing, be it like, especially speaking to folks in Spanish, or like recognize where folks are coming from and understanding their situation. They verbally express like their thanks and appreciation, and that's really the reason why I'm doing this. And it's been nice, like just to work so closely with patients and with so much responsibility, and a chance, so many like chances to actually like affect their care for the better.
Ignacio?
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, definitely the most rewarding has been kind of starting my PACE rotation, which is essentially, it's kind of like an early clinical experience where we get to be in the clinics. I'm at the Federally Qualified Health Center in Santa Ana, where Dr. Vega works, and I'm doing pediatrics right now. I had been away from that a little while, like just because like I used to work for WIC. I really missed like seeing the little kids. So it's been really rewarding now that I've pretty much finished first year, like being able to go in, interview the parents, talk to the kids, and actually like have an idea of like what to ask, like what could potentially be going on. It just shows that like, everything that I've been learning is like really paying off. As far as like challenges, I think one of the greatest challenges that I've faced, like just getting here, like was definitely just figuring out like the whole application process. Like that was just such a struggle. Like I had been out of school for a while. I was worried that my classes, my prereqs were like expired. I didn't know who I was going to reach out to for like letters of rec. Just being that, a first generation student, no one in my family's been a doctor or worked in healthcare before. That was just like a big challenge, but luckily I was able to find people who were able to help me. And I was able to just kind of find information online, kind of like in similar programs, such as the one that we're here with today.
Well, what about you, Dr. Vaga? You've practiced medicine for a bit. So what about your?
Right. Yeah. So I would say that looking back, so 26 years now in practice, all in the Santa Ana FQHC. So I include residency in there, but why not? The years are starting to add up so much, like I can't keep track. There's not much of a point. Let's just say decades. But the thing that was my challenge looking back was honestly, I think, more internal. And just kind of like the fact that I needed to grow, mature, gain confidence, lose imposter syndrome. That struggle was profound. When I think back to like what's pertinent, like in your 20s, maybe early 30s, like that process is huge. But it was also one of my greatest advantages in terms of when I grew, I realized like how far I'd come, and I let that process play out. I wish it was faster. I mean, oh God. I mean, I made big old mistakes because I just didn't know any better. I don't really blame myself. I definitely don't sit up at night thinking about it because you just don't know what you don't know. And when you're a certain level, now that I have kids of my own, I'm watching them go through these stages, and there's things they just can't handle yet because they don't have the maturity yet to handle it. But I know they will grow into it, and I just want to keep them, kind of on a road where they can make their own choices and that they have the best available to them, and keep them safe as long as possible. And that's really all you can do. So it's just kind of the realization of those things. But the thing that it really gave me as a gift is that I'm still curious. I'm still interested in growing personally, because I now see how like that's intertwined with the service. Like Adesele said, exactly. Like I always wanted to go where I could do the most good. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I went into family medicine. That's why I work where I work. But I'm always interested in other aspects for growth, and I hope that never stops, because I think that keeps me motivated as my body becomes more decrepit. At least my mind is still active and engaged, and hoping for better things. And it's not, and I see it makes me passionate, not because it's about me and like my growth, but like I see how that helps my patients and helps students and helps the community. And I very much see how all of us, when we're working in this effort, can have that same level of achievement. And that's great to know. For I love my individual students when they get married and have a child, or they have some new professional development or something else, or they just feel like happy for the first time in a long time. I mean, that's a great achievement for me, but I also know that's going to translate exponentially to help the community, help a lot of people live better lives. And that gives me a lot of hope too.
Next question is how heavily is the MCAT weighed for the PRIME-LC applicant?
That's a hard transition. But I think so MCATs, scores, you're going to get tested. The testing is still important, but it's definitely de-emphasized now with we've got pass fail boards exams during medical school, so that's a big difference. And so I would say that it matters, but we really do pursue as general admissions, and then certainly for PRIME-LC, it's a very holistic process. So it's part of your score. It's not everything, and we can talk more about. But I would so if that's your weaker area, really try to focus on it. I mean, for some students, they're really strong in terms of community health and doing volunteership and leadership, and that's great. And they have like 6 examples there. But if your MCAT's really the weak spot, I know it's not necessarily what you want to do, but focusing on that will help your application rather than getting a 7th or an 8th leadership position.
Great. And then the other question was how holistic is the admission review for your program? Well,
I'd say we kind of address that, but so when you are actually accepted in the School of Medicine before you're accepted into PRIME-LC. So you have to go through the regular med school admissions. Now, there's a strong focus on service here. So therefore, just applying to PRIME-LC, if you have those bona fides, got the background to fit PRIME-LC, the resilience and the service, you're going to be a strong medical school applicant everywhere. But when it comes to PRIME-LC admissions, we're really focused on, honestly, like, will you have that 30-year career where you keep giving back to the community? We're trying to project from you forward. And I think we're doing a pretty good job based on our grad data.
And then they're asking, how competitive is the application to Prime-LC?
I'll sorry, answer this one again. Well, I think there's what is a competitive applicant for Prime-LC. Hopefully,
They want to know they want to know the magic sauce.
Yeah, and there's no magic sauce. So everybody comes at for this from a different perspective, and that's okay. Like, trust me, I mean, everything affects health and well-being. So if you have a background, in mental health, if you have a background in nutrition, you're going to be, you've got a very broad avenue to have a stronger impact. I think that when it comes to most folks who get admitted to the School of Medicine, are accepted in Prime-LC. So getting into Prime-LC after you're accepted in School of Medicine is actually a little bit easier. Most of the students we take right away because it's really clear that they belong here, and that's exactly what we're looking. That forms that great cohort who will be your support for the next 5 years and beyond.
This is another question: is how are they any common mistakes the applicant make in the application process, and how do you avoid them? I would say the first one is read the instructions. That's the one I would say, but go ahead.
Students, you're close to the process. What would you see as potential pitfalls and so maybe some of your colleagues experienced?
Sorry, I was reading through the questions and trying to answer them as well. Is this in regards to the application process, like applying?
Yeah, just things.
Yeah, the mistakes. Yeah,
mistakes that you could make.
Oh yeah, I made lots of mistakes. I will admit I'm a reapplicant because I tried to do it on my own without any mentorship, and that was not the best idea. I did try to follow some of my undergraduate's advice, but the issue with my undergraduate, which is, an elite, like an Ivy school, is that they actually didn't know how to work with someone of my background, of like where I was at as a trad student. And so the advice they gave me just wasn't applicable, and I followed kind of the wrong advice at the time. And so for me, it was really like clarifying my narrative in a good way, not necessarily like fudging it, right? But just honing in on my narrative a lot better, and addressing, like in talking with mentors afterwards, I realized like certain things I did wrong, right, within my application. So really just trying to get a lot, like as an introvert, I understand it can be difficult to reach out to people and to like seek mentorship. There are a lot of great programs of like medical students who are undergoing this process, who are willing to like talk to you and talk through your application, right? Because it ends up being an individual process, really. It's hard to give like overarching advice of like, have this score, have this GPA. Like, of course, there's like baselines where certain schools won't look at your application, right? Like UCI, the first time I didn't get a secondary, but the second time I did, right? What was some of the differences? I think part of that was like potentially my GPA at the time. So really getting not just one mentor, right, but different people's perspectives, someone who like understands where you're coming from, and then also someone who has like more understanding of like the application process itself, either because they're attending or faculty or working at the school.
Yeah, I think that there's like a lot of potential like errors you can make in just like on your application, because like you have to enter like all your coursework, and like if you enter things wrong, like they have to kind of, your application gets delayed. I think some of the common things I see is like, so like in people's personal statements, like they can't really give a good explanation of why they want to be a doctor. That's a common one that like can be a big red flag. Another thing too is that so when it comes to like applying to medical school, it goes by rolling admissions. So a lot of people see this and they think that they can apply like later on in the year because the deadline it says it's like way later, like November or December. But the thing is that schools will start schools will start reviewing them kind of in the order that they come in. So you want to apply early. I think that's a really big mistake that some people will make, is they end up just applying too late. And at that point, even if you're a really great candidate, unfortunately, like your application gets viewed last, and interview spots might already be filled.
So this is a question. How many people read your personal statement for both of yours? How many people read it and gave you feedback? And who were some of those people that read and gave you feedback?
Yeah, I had a doctor that I worked with. He offered to read my personal statement. There was a student at UCI who's actually in the PRIME-LC program who reviewed mine, and then my wife reviewed mine, and that was it for me. I didn't want to have too many people look at it because then they kind of, they might all give you different advice, or if you go to someone who doesn't know you as well, like, I feel like that can really just make writing the personal statement pretty challenging.
And your wife is the most important person, right?
Exactly.
That's a sign of a good relationship. The fact that you withstood that and you're still together, because that could be fraught. It's kind of high stakes and high intensity there.
I guess just to add to that, I had my partner also, but two of my closest friends are English majors. So I definitely, one of them with employment that used to be copywriting. So I had them review it just to make sure I wasn't making any major errors and to comment on narrative. But also I got a lot of good commentary from the post-baccalaureate director who reviewed my application very thoroughly, or in my statement, and gave a lot of good feedback.
Awesome. Somebody's asking, they took prerequisites around 2009 and 2013. Would they be valid for your programs? And they said they also have some prereqs recently as well. So
yeah, I'll answer that from a general. That PRIME-LC wouldn't concern itself with that necessarily, but general admissions would. So yeah, if you have, your last academic classes were over 10 years ago, you need to re-engage because so much has changed. There's a lot of things that change in your life, and it's not easy to re-engage with academics if you've been working or whatever you've been doing after absence of more than a few years, 5 years for sure. So yeah, I'm glad that if you have some recent academic work, keep that up to show like, hey, I'm engaged. I really want to do this, to the point where I'm taking these extra classes, oftentimes while holding down, a job. That just shows you really want it. So good.
Does PRIME-LC offer financial support for DACA students?
They are a priority for us. So generally we recognize, so we've had a number of DACA students come through our program, and generally they have gotten the full tuition support. So we'd hope to continue that in the future.
The other question is research required for PRIME-LC?
It's part of that holistic review, right? So you don't want to do things just to check a box, but sitting on general admissions, even prime admissions, it helps to at least have some experience in it. For one thing, you may not know whether you like it or not until you try it. And then some folks, that was their ticket into medical school. While they had some clinical experience, they had some volunteer and leadership experience, and maybe they're working a job while in school, because I respect that. You just want to fill your time, right? But maybe it was research. I said she had a very strong research background. Ignacio too had a strong research background when he came in, thanks to their, the avenues they found and the opportunities. You got to hustle. And if that's the path you go down, even if it seems kind of disconnected from the community, I recognize that you can't just call your shot when you're a student or in immediate post-grad years. You take what's available to you and you make the most of it. And if I can see that that string where one thing led to another because you did a good job and that led to something else, that's a very, very positive thing for you, whether it's research, clinical, volunteer leadership, or employment.
And this is something that is going to come up, so I'm going to just ask it. Do you want to see clinical research, bench research, or even social science research? What kind of research is the secret sauce?
The one that speaks to you. Like hopefully you really enjoy it. I did research. I didn't love it. And I was like, I did it. I checked the box. I'd said I tried it, and then I didn't have to necessarily go back. But I would try to do something that, you actually want to do. And it's not just checking a box. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as, even if you're not as familiar, that I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to give it everything I have. I'm going to show integrity in it. I'm going to try to, get something out of it in terms of my growth, but also maybe a publication or a poster presentation. Those things, like a letter from from the researcher I was working with, those things matter. So that's the way I would approach all those different domains. Again, clinical work or research.
So this is a question about post-bac. People want to know, should they do a post-bac on do-it-yourself post-bac, a UC post-bac, or what kind of post-bacs do you recommend, and they could increase their chances?
I guess I will. Yeah. The UC Consortium post-bac is probably one of the most affordable ones, and specifically focused on folks from, they say, disadvantaged backgrounds. I like to say marginalized, disenfranchised. It doesn't necessarily have to be of a certain race, right? Because they do consider intersectionality. I believe, like from my personal experience, that those are probably going to be the most helpful. Not all of them work the same way. I know the UCI one can sometimes lead into kind of getting you a position in School of Medicine just because of how their system works, but the UCSF one doesn't provide you that direct pipeline into the UCSF School of Medicine. So those are my favorite. When I was looking up other like post-bacs, they were really expensive, and I can't really speak to just exactly how they end up like training their students, but the UC Consortium is pretty good.
Yeah, and the challenging part with the UC Consortium is there's not a lot of spots, and you gotta apply early. So, and make sure they have I think they have a centralized application system, but each of them have different requirements. So make sure that you look at those, the UC post-bac consortium. This is another question. This is somebody else wants to know, how does the program help and support students to balance their coursework and projects and be successful?
I think, okay, I'll take a stab at it. We'll preach to you from day one that, you kind of have to find your own balance and your own gears. Everybody's got different levels of, how far deep down they can work, and, how their passion and how that translates. And everybody needs a break at some point too. Our goal is to help you find that. And honestly, if you gain that in the 5 years with us, you've gained an incredibly valuable lesson. You've learned a lot about yourself and when you can push it and when you don't want to. So we preach that a lot. And there are times when I believe strongly in saying yes to as much as you can. And I'll try to throw as many opportunities in front of you as you can, but you can also say no. Learning how to say no gracefully is really important. And also, hey, when I'm doing pretty well and I've got my academics and my wellness is taken care of and my relationships are good, push ahead. So I think learning how to do that and maneuver professionally through that is a really good skill to have, and it will set you up for the rest of your career, because that never stops. You'll keep going back to some of that same skill set. And just realize you have to check in with yourself every now and then, do some reflection, because what you want to take on and what you can take on shifts over time due to a whole bunch of circumstances.
Ignacio or Rosali, can you guys share a little bit about that, because you guys are in the thick of it?
Yeah, I think definitely starting first year, like there's so many opportunities, like you want to say yes to everything. I think like they've done a really great job at just giving us like expectations. Like they tend to recommend like, try not to take on too many activities. Like Prime-LC is already like a pretty like significant like amount of work that we're going to do. I think for me, it's been like I've tried not to take on projects that I truly like I'm not like passionate about. And I think like sometimes some people might just take on too much and they'll realize like, oh no, like this was a mistake. And I think like there is like the opportunity to, you know, talk to the supervisor or whoever's running the project and letting them know. I feel like they've been pretty graceful. Like I've done that with a project or two where it's like, you know what, I don't think this is actually a great fit for me. I'll do something else. But I started slow, and I found that if I do projects that I'm really passionate about, I'm definitely like a lot more able to make the time, and that's been my experience so far. I think right now I'm involved with maybe like 4 like main things, and that's been like I'm not too busy to where it's been affecting my studies. So I'm involved with PRIME-LC, LMSA. I'm involved with a quality improvement project with the FQHC regarding like obesity management, and then I'm also working with like the state nutrition program on like it's a program that's helping like create like more culturally like relevant nutrition resources. So that's something that, you know, obviously kind of like with my background, like it's something that isn't too difficult that I can really contribute towards.
Yeah. I'll be 100% transparent. Signing up for PRIME-LC, I think across the board, you are signing up for extra work. You will be doing a graduate course study that will take your time. You need to read the articles. You need to end up writing a paper or two here and there. And you'll notice that your other peers aren't necessarily, you know, you'll be tempted to compare yourself, right? But I think the graduate course is very important to like our education. It's an education we don't get otherwise outside of like science. And in terms of support, a lot of things at UCI School of Medicine is student run. And so that does mean that you'll sometimes feel the pressure coming from like an undergraduate that had heavy administration and administrative support. It was shocking for me. And so at some points, you know, it's easy to feel the burnout. You do have to know your boundaries. It's easy to sometimes see like other people like saying they're studying 24/7. Like honestly, no one really studies for 24/7. Your brain actually needs time to sit and process that information and consolidate that information for you to actually remember it in the long term. So it's really learning how to set up your boundaries for like both studying hours, like, you know, getting your sleep, eating your meals, doing that thing that fills your cup, which for me was like some volunteering in person, like, you know, needle exchange and things that filled my cup, and identifying those things that are going to, you know, in the end, give you the energy. As Ignacio was saying, that, you know, he only followed projects that he felt really passionate about. So.
Awesome. This is another question, and this is just to make a plug. There's a lot of questions about AMCAS and application. Last week, we had 3 deans of admission that went through the entire AMCAS and showed and answered a bunch of questions, so you could watch that video. But this is a question, what would be the best time to submit your primary application, and what would you be considered late?
I mean, if you can, it's rolling admissions, so I do it ASAP. I mean, I would just do it. Schools may have different timelines in terms of when they're open, but I would look at those timelines, take your top 5 schools, and try to get the application done beforehand. So it takes some planning, which I was not good at all when I was in undergrad. But yeah, I think that Ignacio mentioned, just you want to be on time with everything as much as possible. It can give you an advantage, and you need every advantage you can get.
This is a question. I'm sorry.
Just really quick. The advice I got from the UC postbac, which I'll just share, which was within kind of the first month and a half of the open application submission deadline. So like when you're finally able to submit it, like within that month and a half is a good time. I got different advice from my undergrad, but theirs was a little unrealistic.
This is a question for Dr. Vaga. Does every applicant receive a secondary, and what does UCI look for in an application for a secondary? And then what are the official MCAT, GPA, and cutoff?
Yeah, so not everybody receives a secondary application. There is a formula and an algorithm that does include GPA and does include your MCAT, but there's not really a cutoff per se. So every application is reviewed even as a primary application to make sure that they kind of get saved to review before they're not offered a secondary. So even the holistic review process even applies to your primary application. And there's definitely some that with lower scores that will move on to the secondary application based on all the other elements that we look at.
And then they wanted to know about the interview format for the medical school and PRIME-LC. And is it the traditional MMI, and are they blind interviewers? Meaning that do they look at your application?
Right. So the application, so you have traditional, I think traditional interviews are really just done one-on-one. And so you will have 2 of those for School of Medicine, then 1 for PRIME-LC in addition, as I mentioned. And you also do an MMI type interview online at your leisure. So and when we get your applications, for the one-on-one interviews, your application is they cut out your grades and what's left is like your activities, your personal statement, and just some basics, kind of like where the first page is like where you live and disadvantage status, things like that.
This is another question that came up. Do you have to, if you're a non-Latino, can you apply to PRIME-LC?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's about 1 in 5 of our students do not, and we, it's essentially self-report, right, for race and ethnicity, and so that's so 1 in 5 does not identify as Latino.
I mean, one of my good friends, and probably was one of in your first class, Dr. Duncan.
Parker Duncan.
Good old boy from Kentucky, and he's not practicing in Sonoma County and in a FHQ, and goes up once a week and takes care of farm workers. And so, and he's a good old boy from Kentucky. So,
I don't know how good an old boy he is. Like, well, he is from Kentucky. No, he's great. He's a great leader, and he's been and nationally he's recognized as a leader in trying to create a national healthcare plan for that every person living in the United States can have for free.
And then they also want to know, is UCI School of Medicine pass-fail?
Pass-fail in terms of, yes, the first year is completely pass-fail. From then on, there's honors available. So it's pass-fail honors 2nd and 3rd year. And then 4th year, yes, there's honors available too. So I guess it's 2 through 4 is pass-fail honors.
And then they want to know, some people want to know, what is the day-to-day routine for medical students?
Yeah, so it's very different from year to year. First year, let's see. So kind of starting at the beginning of the year, we took anatomy. So like that was a pretty significant time. Like it would take up a lot of time. So what would be like a typical day? I guess I can give you an idea of like what a week would look like, because even the days like vary. But so a lot of the classes, attendance is optional because the classes are recorded. So it gives you some freedom to kind of plan out your day, which is really nice. But for example, like maybe on Monday, you might go in the morning, you have anatomy lab, you'll dissect that day. Then later you might have a class or 2 that you go in person. The next day, you might not have any classes in the morning, but then you have a class called like Clinical Foundations, which is where you're learning how to like interact with patients. So we have like patient actors who come in and you'll interview them. As part of PRIME-LC, like we'll interview them in Spanish. You also practice, like later on, you'll do physical exams. And it's kind of just like you alternate. So like with anatomy, like so you do the dissection and then you teach it to your other classmates. So you have other days during the week when you're going to be like teaching your friends and colleagues about what you did. And then other days you're going to lecture, you're focusing on a particular like organ system at a time. And then we have like the clinical foundations course, like I mentioned. And then for Prime-LC, you know, if it happens to be a week where we have like a monthly meeting, or we have our Chicano Latino studies courses, like that'll be something that we do in the evening. And that's pretty much it. Like it's just, it really varies day to day, but that's typically what like the first year looks like. I've been told that second year is mostly, you know, going to class, you go to your PACE rotation, and you're studying for the step. And then after that, it changes quite a bit, which is something that Adeseli would be able to share with you.
Yeah, MS 2-year is a whirlwind for sure. It is a lot of you know, pharmacology, microbiology. You're kind of taking things block by block, so like month by month, and then at the end of the year, so like a day to day would be like some folks attend lectures, some folks decide not to attend lectures. They decide to work out, do other things, and maybe study on their own. Then they'll watch the podcast on their own. And you know, then incorporate whatever research or extracurriculars they're doing, right? It gets, your schedule's pretty much like your own to play with a lot more in MS1 and MS2 year. MS3 year, your schedule is no longer your own, and it will vary drastically between rotations. Rotations can vary from 4 to 8 weeks, and you know, you'll find on some rotations are letting you out like at 2 p.m. to go study, and other rotations you're there until 7 p.m. In a surgery that took a little bit longer that day. So really, that's a lot more of like, you know, getting up as you would for a normal work day, but a little bit earlier, sometimes like 6 a.m. and getting to the hospital and then coming back anywhere. They can vary. So you don't really get as much time to play with your schedule as you do like in MS1 and MS2 year.
This is another question. Is it still important to get clinical shadowing hours if you work full-time in a paid clinical experience? That's actually, I've seen this on a couple of blogs. They say that even if you are getting a paid clinical experience, you need to have volunteer shadowing. And can you talk about that? And I know Araceli mentioned that as well, but if you want to add to that as well.
No, I think from my position on admissions committee, no. If you're working as a medical assistant, if you're working as an EMT, if you're doing something that, you know, scribe, those are common things we see. No, you don't need to engage more. You know, if you're working 40 hours a week, you don't need to, an extra 6 of shadowing doesn't necessarily help you. It could help you out in terms of, you know, exploring. I really want to be a nephrologist, and you want to look at the kidney, and so you shadow a nephrologist, you know, every other week. Of course, that's fine, and list it because it counts. But no, I don't think that would necessarily add a ton to your application. Again, think of the holistic process and look at, you know, things where you might have some gaps. That might be a good place to spend your time. I think I haven't heard anybody in admissions say. I guess one thing is if you have a very, very focused part of your so say you only worked in an outreach center doing and it's based at a community center, and you're doing health education there, and you are like interacting with folks on health issues, but you haven't been in the hospital or clinics yet, that would be something where you need to actually be in the healthcare realm, in some kind of in a like focused healthcare setting. That would be a recommendation. I hope that makes sense. Happy to clarify. I don't know. I said, do you have a different? What do you think?
Oh yeah, I did not add shadowing hours. It was all my clinical research, which did put me working with cancer patients in the infusion center in their office visits. So that's where my hours came from. But I will make the caveat for DOs, because I have some friends who are in DO schools. You do need to specifically shadow, like usually with someone who's DO practicing or went to school or something like that.
See, that's funny because the opposite, I just don't see that happening. So if you like spent time with a, a DO, orthopedist, or family doctor or whatever, I'd still count that. I wouldn't discriminate. I can't remember ever. I'm honestly, I don't think I even look. It's just like Dr. X. So anyway, interesting.
Yeah, no, I think
But I kind of get it. I do understand the background there. That DOs have certain skill sets and different practices than MDs do.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things I've seen in a lot of the chat groups in our research is that people say that, oh, you need to like do it voluntarily and not paid, so it shows altruism. And I'm like, well, altruism shows in hundreds of ways. It doesn't have to be shadowing for free. Also, if you're a licensed person and you're doing something clinical, if you're there, they probably put you to work. And I don't know, I personally don't like to work for free. So that's just
right. Yeah, I totally, again, tremendous respect for people who have to work and balance, because that just shows you needed to, and you pulled it off while you're pulled in different directions. Also, shadowing is okay, and you take what you can get, but it's much better to have a more active role. Shadowing is only takes you so far, and to have like more than like 50 or 60 hours of shadowing, it's like, well, you want to advance beyond that, so you're actually doing something, even if it's just like I did, restocking things and helping people, getting emesis basin and things like that, really basic stuff. At least I was very happy when I was in the hospital to have an active role. And I was a recreation coordinator, which turned out to be a lot of fun at the VA. I didn't even realize that when I volunteered for it.
This is a question, you've already answered it, but we've heard it twice more. And so, kind of saying, does PRIME-LC undocumented friendly and financial support for undocumented students?
So full transparency, I think we are, and it's critical because that's an important part of our community that we care for. And I mentioned that every DACA student who's gone through has had full tuition scholarship. That doesn't necessarily cover living expenses, so we really have to work with you as a student. But you get with DACA, because you can't necessarily you can't take out those federal loans. There are some programs that we can tap into. That we have some private scholarship money for one thing. And then to PRIME-LC specifically, then there's some UC-based programs that can help out. But it's a more of a challenge. There's no doubt about it. Our goal is to try to minimize that challenge and your stress about it.
Yeah, I know 2 DACA students that went through PRIME-LC, and they're now practicing. So this is another question. This is in terms of, this is actually pertaining just to Ignacio. That says that you already have a master's degree. Are you getting a second master's degree through PRIME-LC? Are you opting out, or?
Yeah, this is something that I have talked to Dr. Vega about. So there is an option, if you already have a master's program, you can do some sort of like internship. I believe there were like more opportunities in the past, but I am planning on doing another master's. So right now I'm thinking of either doing a master's in public health or a master's in business administration. I think it's something that's going to help me to be able to better serve my community in the future. And I think they're really valuable, because the degree that I have is in nutrition, which I think is really great as well. But I think I could make a greater impact with an MPH or MBA.
This is another question too, is what if you have strong clinical and volunteering background but no research hours? Should I not bother applying?
I would apply and try to get some research hours. So ideally, and so you can count something that's in process. Especially if you have like some kind of verification. Like I just started in this research center, or I started in this lab a month ago, so I only have like 20 hours so far, but I anticipate, we are working together regularly, so I anticipate another 100 hours, and we are going to, here's what we're studying and here's what I hope to gain out of it. That will help a lot. So no, it wouldn't be an automatic don't apply by any stretch. That said, most students who apply now do take a gap year, which I didn't know existed, but would have been very, very, very helpful for me if I knew it existed. So yeah, it's something to think about as well. Or gap years, it's yeah, just never. There's never necessarily a perfect time to apply or not apply. But yeah, use your own schedule, get good advice, and hopefully that helps.
This is another question. How much is COVID that's affected certain communities? And it's impacting communities. For this person's asking that they basically, with everything else going out, some of their classes are like 5 years old. What should they do, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think we recognize how disruptive it's been. And so definitely, I mean, it's affected us in medical school as well. Araceli's had a very different experience. Ignacio's had a different experience as well. And we're just finally kind of coming back to normal. So our first year going back to Peru in 3 years. So we're doing that again in June. So I always said it was be the last step of the curriculum to kind of click back to normal. And I hope it does, so knock on wood. So yes, absolutely. There's an understanding out there. I think broadly, I'm sure every school of medicine's kind of accounted for this in its admissions process. And so we understand.
This is another question. How many people apply to PRIME-LC and how many people get accepted? And I could share that data if you, it's 100% of people that don't apply don't get in, right? Is that a true fact number?
Very good. Yeah. You sound like a lawyer, but yes, that's right. You're leading the witness. Yeah, that's true. So, but the actual numbers who apply, it's about 600 who apply. And your secondary applications, though, are all reviewed by a very special person who spends a lot of nights and weekends looking at them, every single one of them. And that's the pool that's decided for interview. So yeah, that's how it breaks down. So at that point, for secondary applications, there's a few hundred to go through. 12 spots per year, 12 PRIME-LC positions per year.
There's another question. What is considered a competitive MCAT score? And then also, how many times should they take the MCAT?
So this is where I will refer you. There is, if you go to the School of Medicine admissions page, there's a frequently asked questions fact. So just go to the fact there. They can tell you average GPA, average MCAT scores, but those are the average scores. I can never remember it off the top of my head. Sorry. And it's just been a really long week. So I don't trust myself exactly at this point. But yeah, those are average scores. And again, think holistically. If you have your mentors telling you your application looks really strong because of X, Y, and Z, yeah, your scores are a little weaker. You could definitely think about taking the exam again. You want to try to, look back at what happened last time and improve upon it. So you see that upward trajectory, and sometimes that's all you need. Same thing with your grades. If you have, maybe you struggled freshman year, my grades got better as I went through undergrad. No doubt I learned how to play the game as I was going. So if you have that upward trajectory, that's a good thing. If you have a downward trajectory, that's concerning. So, there's got to be a reason for that. You may have to explain, and there's very legitimate reasons. COVID-19, I had a personal illness. There's another challenge going on. That totally happens. We get that. Sometimes if there's a real severe dip and your numbers aren't looking good, that's a great time to take that. And yet the situation that put you there, because it's so often, it's not just one thing, it's like three things, but you're come out of those things now that you've graduated. That is an ideal situation for a post-bac prove-it year. Go out, show you can swim with the sharks and succeed, and that's just outstanding. Then you have a nice solid application.
Yeah, and people are asking how many times you could take the MCAT, and I'm going to put that link in there. It has like pretty detailed instructions from the AAMC, because they have some rules that you can take it maximum 3 times in a 1 year period, consecutive. So you can read all that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. But take the MCAT when you're ready. Don't,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If your practice exams you're not doing well, you should probably, study some more.
Yeah.
Definitely do practice exams. That's like some folks, their anxiety gets to them. Like practice exams are the way to like really know if you're ready for the test and the way to prepare yourself as well. And that will be true for all of med school.
Yeah.
But also do not take the real MCAT as a practice, because that's been written on a lot of these blogs now. People are saying just go take the real one and see how you feel, and not,
Oh no.
Because why is that? Why would you say
Can you
no?
trust anything on the internet? Is anything like actually accurate, or people just trying to screw you up left and right? Yeah.
So why do you tell them not to do that, Dr. Vega?
Because if you bomb it, you don't want an 11th percentile on your record. You just don't. Like, yes, your upward trajectory just got a lot wider, but people will just be drawn to that. Whoa, what happened? And were you taking this seriously? Like, do you really want? I mean, that could be a legitimate question. Like, if you're just kind of like one off, like, did you take the LSAT too and the GMAT, and not sure what kind of person you want to be when you grow up? So no. Take it when I would prepare, and it's not fun. So if you take it once and get it done with a great score, retire from that exam. Trust me, there's more ahead. So yeah, I would just do your best. Be thoughtful about it. Get good advice.
And if, let's say, somebody takes it the first time and they do okay, then they do it. How do you look at people that retake the MCAT?
I'm all for it. Like I said, there's a lot of things that can interfere, including anxiety, and you just didn't prepare the way you should have. When you actually get in the exam, you realize, like, gosh, this is a different pace than I thought. So having that experience can build on it. But yeah, I just wouldn't go into it cold. I would go into it with the expectation, I'm going to do this once, get a great score, and then be done. And if it doesn't work out, go back, figure out what you could do better, and then try it again.
Yeah, and also, like, this is something that I've seen. Is I had a patient that was on his way to take the MCAT and wanted to be discharged to go take the MCAT after he had a broken collarbone. Probably that's not you could probably not do that as well, or if your dog dies or something like that. But I had this patient freaking out because I'm supposed to take the MCAT, and we're like, dude, you have a broken collarbone, even if he discharged you. So we had the attending had to like convince this person not to go there. He's like, I'm going to hold his discharge until.
Oh, wow.
Because this person was adamant.
That's the most unusual involuntary hold I've ever heard of. So,
but I mean,
MCAT failure.
Yeah. But this person was really adamant. But they also had like other, But anyways, so this is a question that I'm sure it's an obvious yes, but I'll ask it anyways. Does Prime-LC reject a lot of competitive applicants to their program?
No, we want to. Hey, I would love the whole medical school to be Prime-LC. Trust me. So, but
we should have more spots.
With the resources we have, 12 is a good number. So we do what we can. We try to give the students every advantage, and that's why 12 works. It's actually approved by the state too, so it's kind of that's what we're mandated to do. We do have classes. We have super prime classes of 18. We've been discouraged from doing that, and it does. We have a lot of small group teaching, and so it puts a strain on that. You can imagine. You want to get hands-on, you want to be participatory. And so if we had like 30 in our prime students, we'd have to really expand what we have for resources.
Yeah, and somebody wanted to know they have a PhD in biomedical engineering, and they're going to be finished, and they're interested in the Prime-LC program. Because they have a PhD, are they disqualified for applying to the Prime-LC?
No. Double doctorate, you love education. That's great. Congratulations. I couldn't do it, so more power to you. In my respect.
Smart person.
This is also a good time to pitch, because before I leave the resources concept, if any of you happen to have a very wealthy, aunt or something like that, feel free. There's also a donate button on that PRIME-LC webpage. So hit them up.
Somebody wants to know, they have taken some of the prereqs that are 10 years old, and some of them are missing. Should that person retake all of them, or just take additional prereqs to finish their program, their courses?
You might want to check with admissions, but I think that if you do the prereqs, they still count. But like I said earlier, same answer applies. Like I don't know if you have to do a whole thing again. That seems a lot. So, but you want to get some courses and show you can still do it after more than 5 years. That's a good thing.
And this other person wants to know, why is it important to have recency? I would just say one example: if you pick up a biology book from 10 years ago, they don't have CRISPRs in there. So that's a huge part of biology today. It's CRISPRs, and so that's one of them. I would say.
I think it's hard to be a student. I think it's a very different mindset, and I've had multiple people tell me go back and get a master's in education or an MPH, and I'm just like, yeah, but I no, just no, that's not happening for me.
How are you going to find the time?
I made a very tough bargain with myself when I was miserable studying for step 1 of the USMLE, where I said no more education. And this is where the gap year would have helped me out a lot, because I wouldn't have been so burnt out at that stage. I said no more education for at least 5 years after I graduate from medical school. And now that's standing at 26 years. And no, I actually do read. So I have that going for me, but yeah, it's tough, and we want to see that you can do it again. You may find that by going back and even taking like 2 or 3 classes at community college, after working for 5 or 7 years, it's like, no, I don't like this. I think most people find they really love it and they re-engage, but there's definitely a percentage who don't. And then I would say, don't think seriously twice about applying to medical school, because it's going to be that times a lot.
They wanted to know about the Lima Peru rotation, other Latin American rotations. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, we used to go to Mexico, and I really liked that, but it wasn't as clinically focused. So what I want you to have is pertinent rotation. Certainly in our community across California, having a background in Mexico makes a lot of sense. But we see people from all over Latin America. I actually have Peruanos in my practice, and it's what we found with working with Peru is it's a lot more hands-on. So you actually are doing a clinical rotation where you get to interview the patient, you get to examine the patient, present to the attending. That's going to help this stuff stick a lot more versus shadowing. Shadowing is, like I said, I'm not a huge believer in it. Great way to get your foot in the door, but in terms of active engagement with stuff that helps you grow as the doctor you want to be, you want to have a more active role. And the teaching out there is outstanding. The hands-on is outstanding. And so, yeah, it's a great time.
Just one final question for the students. And I'm going to let Araceli go first. What if in your pre-med, if you would redo your entire pre-med journey, what would you do differently and why?
Oh, that's interesting. I totally have this no regrets kind of life philosophy, because there are so many factors outside. How am I to say that I would know any better at the time, right? Or that I would know that I would have to financially support my mom right after undergrad, right? That's not anything I could have controlled. I guess the one thing I would have changed is to encourage my little introvert self to go and talk to folks coming from my background who are in medicine, as opposed to whoever alumni I could get a hand on, right? And just being okay with asking questions and engaging, I guess, with the material and kind of the topic a lot more.
Yeah, I have a pretty similar mentality. I don't regret anything that I've done. if I had tried to like apply to medical school like straight out of like a very traditional path, I would not have been ready. Like I really struggled even when I went to my nutrition program. Like I really struggled like talking to people. Like I just wasn't very mature. Like I was so introverted and awkward. It was awful. But I think one of the things that like I really I guess just like advice that I would really give to people is like don't rush through it. Like I think when I started community college, like I really wanted to just take the classes as quickly as I could and transfer because I just wanted to be done as fast as I could. And unfortunately, because I was like working, like, I was taking too many courses and like I just wasn't doing well. I think it's just so important to do well, learn how to study early on. And if you are considering this path, like take the time to like also, do other opportunities, like get involved in, some sort of like volunteering or just activities that you really enjoy. Because those are all things that ultimately are going to like be things that you put on your application. So I would just recommend like, especially if you're at community college, like a lot of people get waivers where it's free or, it's just a lot cheaper compared to if you were taking courses like at a 4-year. I think it's a really great opportunity to really like just explore different things and see what you really like.
And then this is another 2 more questions. Does UCI School of Medicine teach cultural competency, how to approach communities that distrust medicine, and what other courses that are there? And are they just limited to Prime-LC or outside of Prime-LC?
Yeah, every medical school, you should make sure that they should be able to elaborate their curriculum on cultural humility and anti-racism. And if you don't find that, then probably not a good choice. But yeah, we have those elements are threaded through the curriculum for all medical students. And yeah, just because you are in Prime-LC doesn't mean it's not like you only see Latino patients, for example. So I see patients who grew up in very different cultures from all over the world, and that actually very much enriches my practice. Well, 80% speak Spanish. I also have patients who speak exclusively Korean, Tagalog, and other languages as well. And so I think you really want to look for that, and I think we've got a good standing in terms of our cross-cultural curriculum, which is going to enhance next year because we actually we have a new course. So it's medical ethics, society, and health equity. And so there's going to be a new course which draws some of these things together. Still going to be woven throughout your entire journey here in medical school, but yeah, that course will help draw it together a little bit more sharply. So we're excited for that.
This is another question, and I think this is one of those ones you have to reiterate. Do you accept community college prereqs and our community college students eligible for Prime-LC?
Yes and yes. Yeah, for sure.
Ignacio went to right down the road, right?
Yeah, I think I took all but maybe 2 prereqs at community college.
Very, very good. Well, I think that's it. I don't think we have any more questions. Yeah, I mean, there is they wanted to know if there's any programs as a medical student you could be involved with to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think this is one of them that they volunteered for, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just advertise, we do have a summer program for Prime-LC. It's called the Prime Pathways Program. And so you can look that up and apply online. We're looking for folks who are, kind of getting ready to apply for Prime-LC. And it's a great way to get some experience with the program, with our students, with the location, and a lot of training that will help you shine your application. So I'd advertise that as well. Now it's closed.
We posted it. We posted it on our
cool.
We posted it on our IG and our socials.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. And thanks for participating, everybody. It means a lot that I told some very powerful doctors earlier today that there's this group that's going to meet on Friday evenings. And I'm like, that is impressive, because all of these powerful folks are like, man, Friday used to be my time to decompress and da da da. So it's like, it's really cool that you took the time to do this. So you found that extra gear already.
No,